Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the MBA Experience. So glad you joined us this evening. We will be meeting today from about 5:35 until about 6:15. So thank you so much in advance for your time and spending time with us. This is a webinar series that we are calling our MBA Experience. And today you're going to be hearing from a current student, Steven Carroll. He is our MBA candidate of 2020. Steven just started his Executive MBA actually in January, and he is in his second term. So I wanted to introduce you to Steven. Before we begin, our agenda is right here. I want to step you through that. We are going to take just a few minutes. I want to walk you through our application process and deadlines. It's going to take just a few minutes so you all are familiar. Some of you are coming into this presentation either being already an applicant or someone that has started their application or someone that has not currently applied. And I want to make sure that you're aware of the process and all the deadlines. We will then talk with Steve. Steve is again with us this evening, and we will spend about 30 to 40 minutes speaking with him about his experience, current experience as an Executive MBA student. And then we'll go into question and answer. So that is our agenda for this evening. Again, as I said, some of you are coming into the meeting this evening as an applicant. Some have not applied and some are in the process of applying. So I wanted just to step through the application checklist. We really try to make things super clean and succinct and simple in terms of our process. We know you all are very busy in your lives with your careers and your families. And so we want to make things very simple, but yet gain the information that we need as in the business school to ascertain your candidacy to the program. So I look in this in part one and part two. I really try to break this down for individuals. So part one is the actual completing the application. Now, because you're here with us this evening, at the end of the presentation, you're going to receive an application fee waiver. And there will be a code that we will give you. Also, myself and or my colleague, Rachel Gettler. Rachel is working with a few of you that are online this evening. She will send those out, and I will also send those out to the folks that I've been working with. So let's step through this. Part one, application complete. So that's basically logging on. We will send you the link for this if you don't already have it this evening. Once we finish the presentation, you'll complete your application online. You'll have a fee waiver there. Within that application, you'll upload your resume or your CV, your organization chart, and also your candidate's letter for candidacy to the admissions committee. And I call this also your letter of intent. Be thinking about ways to approach your letter of intent in terms of some of the things you may want to get out of a program like an Executive MBA and some of the things that you can provide to the program in terms of support in the classroom and your colleagues during the process. Part two of the application is transcripts from your undergrad or grad schools that you've attended. Those need to be sent in to us. 2 letters of recommendation and also 2 successful interviews. So if you break it down into part 1 and 2, it becomes really simple. And part 1 is the main bulk that is required from each of you. And it does not take that long. And I'll step through some of the deadline. So our next application deadline for round 2, and this is our general deadline, is June 17th, 2019. So it's coming up here in a few weeks. We just had our round 1 finalized, which was May 17th. So this is our second now deadline. Priority was May 1 or May 17th. Round 2 is our general. We do have a round 3, but I would encourage each of you, if you have not already applied, to get your application in as soon as possible. Because of a fall start, we have many applications for fall. Students tend to think about fall as the main time to start school, even though we do have multiple starts. Also, our kickoff for the fall term of 2019, this will be EMBA class 126. So those of you that are applying or have applied or will be applying, you would be, if entered into the class, will be in the 126th class of EMBA. The kickoff is going to be August 21st to the 24th of 2019. So thank you for making sure you note those deadlines. Again, I would encourage you to apply before round 2. And with that, you can hold any questions definitely on that till the end, as well as emailing Rachel or myself. We'll be glad to help you. All right, so let's get into our evening. I want to introduce to you Mr. Steve Carroll. Steve is a Senior Vice President at GluMac, a medical, electrical, and plumbing sustainable engineering firm, and heads up the building commissioning group. Steve, with a mechanical engineering background, has more than 30 years of experience in the construction industry. Prior moving to Southern California and joining GluMac 12 years ago, Steve was a New Yorker. And while attending New York Institute of Technology, he started working for a small HVAC firm and eventually became the owner and president of that company. After earning his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, he went on to earn his professional license in engineering as well and become lead accredited professional. At GluMac, he leads a team of professionals that specialize in high-profile, sustainable building commissioning projects. And while not working, he really loves reading, he enjoys hiking, and also spending time with his family here in Southern California. So Steve, thank you so much for being a part of our evening and taking time out of your busy schedule. And we're looking forward to hearing from you this evening. And I just want to give you a chance to say a few things about yourself, and then also tell us why you chose Pepperdine to do your Executive MBA.
Well, thanks, Mike. That was a great intro, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, the bio kind of said it all, but I will give you some more personal insight. I married my college sweetheart. We met actually at New York Institute of Technology back in the late 80s. So, and I've been married now for 22 years. I have 5 children, 4 of them teenagers right now. So sympathy and pity is welcome. And I was, like I said, Mike said, I was back in New York and moved out here about 12 years ago to Southern California. My wife's family, sisters and brother were out here, so we kind of knew the area, and it was kind of a big move, but I haven't looked back and regretted it. I don't miss the hot, humid, and really cold weather back in New York, and enjoy Southern California weather and lifestyle here very much. So I guess you could say the reasons why I chose Pepperdine, I think I'll take a step back and say start with the reason why I wanted to go back to school. So, I mean, it's been a long time, close to over 30 years that I've not been in school. So it was a tough decision. But as Mike said, I had my own company back in New York, and it was kind of like handed to me as I was working there. The owner basically was retiring at one point and just said, "You want to buy the company?" And I was, 25 years old at the time. I said, "Sure." And so I never actually in school, I took a lot of engineering classes, but I never took a business class or an accounting class or anything like that. I just had no business, I really had no idea. And so I was kind of running that company just by the seat of my pants. I figured if I made money, I was doing okay. And then I started to, wanted to get involved in a different industry and kind of change my career a little bit. And I was doing some mechanical engineering and design work, but really wanted to get into a different field called building commissioning. So I looked into it in New York. It wasn't really a great, the field was still very young, so it was not a aspiring industry in the East Coast, but West Coast on California, it was taking off. So that's one of the reasons we moved out here. And so I sold the company, I sold my house and put the 5 kids and the wife in the car and drove across the country and started working at this company now that I'm at GluMac. And I basically changed careers when, at 40 years old, and I became, instead of a business owner, I started working for a pretty large firm. We were about 300 people at the time, and I was just an employee, and I just worked my 9-to-5 stuff, and I was happy and getting things done. But eventually, the old, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit or just kind of caught up to me, and I started thinking of ways that we can grow this industry, the sector that I was in servicing. When I joined GluMac, the group I run now was only about 5 people, and I was just one of the people. I wasn't in charge of anything. And so I started to look into how do I expand that, how do I grow that, and eventually, as I was more successful at it, I moved up the ladder and got promoted, and I became a partner about 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm running what they call the building commissioning group here at GluMac, and it's about 28 people right now, and we do work all over the country and in the Far East, Pacific Rim, and have projects in Korea and China, Canada, and all up and down the West Coast. So I run the group of like 28 people. I have a whole management structure, and I operate under the umbrella of my larger company. And everything was going fine, and I was happy, and I figured I would just retire that way. And then about a year and a half ago, my company, GluMac, was purchased by a larger company called Tetra Tech, which is about a $3 billion firm and about 16,000 employees, and they're all over the world. And so I became even a smaller cog in there. And so not being a partner anymore because we were bought out, so now I'm just back to being an employee. I started to look at my future and say, well, what could happen And then I realized that as I looked at the executive board of my new company of Tetra Tech, everybody had engineering degrees for sure, because they're an engineering firm, but almost all of them had either a doctorate in business or an MBA or an EMBA or something like that. And it was right about that time where I started to really look into it. And another push for that also was my oldest daughter actually was working for Pepperdine as a recruiter for the MBA program. And so I would often talk to her about business things and operations and strategy, and she would kind of want to recruit me to go to Pepperdine. And I just said it wasn't for me. I didn't want to go back to school at this late stage of my life. I figured it would just be a waste. But eventually, after talking to her, she introduced me to what's called the mini MBA program at Pepperdine, which is like a 10-week, you meet every other Saturday for 8 hours. And it's just a quick overview of all the different modules that is in the MBA program or the EMBA program. And so I did that. I signed up for that last spring in 2018. And to be honest, absolutely loved the class. I mean, I loved going there on Saturdays. You did 4 hours of each module, so they covered everything in the 10 weeks that the course was there. And in the course of taking the mini MBA, people like Mike came in and started talking about the other programs at Pepperdine, meaning the Executive MBA and the full-time MBA and all the other ones. And so that was the first time I heard of the EMBA program. So I went. My daughter actually never really mentioned it to me. And so when I went back and I mentioned it to her that they were talking about that and said the EMBA program, she said, yeah, it's a little pricey. That's why I didn't want to mention it to you. And I said, well, that's okay. But we went on to talk more about that. And then we talked more about what I wanted to do and why I wanted to go back to school. And I wasn't familiar with a lot of what would go on at school and MBA anymore, because I had my daughter's ideas and what she was going through, but I didn't want to do that program. What I did know is what I didn't want to do. And I didn't want to be in a class with people in their 20s who just got out of school who knew a hell of a lot more than I did. And I didn't want to have to take a test or go back and take any kind of test to get into the school. And then I didn't want to do online classes because I knew that didn't work for me. And so the more I looked into the different schools that are local around here, the more I just coming back to Pepperdine. But then there was still some issues that were there that I either the time or the money. And so eventually, based on just where my daughter was going, and then when I connected with Mike and we started talking more about it, I got to sit in on a class at Pepperdine as one of the graduating. They were graduating soon, and got a chance to talk to those people. And that was really the clincher when I got to talk to some of the people that were going to be graduating soon about their thoughts on the course. And just as far as even going back to school, a lot of people were encouraging by it. One of my partners said it was the best thing that you can ever do in your life right now. I have my CFO of my company is a Pepperdine alum, so she was all for it and wrote me a nice reference letter to get in. So eventually, everything pointed towards Pepperdine, and that's why I'm here. Kind of a long story, but I wanted to get you the concept.
Steve,
I wasn't always thinking about going back to school, so.
No, Steve, thanks so much for sharing that with us and just giving us, an insight to your process internally and what you were experiencing. If you're joining us, I know a few individuals have joined us since we started. We're here this evening with Mr. Steven Carroll, EMBA candidate for 2020. Steve is a current student. He's in his second term at the Pepperdine Graziadio School of Business in his Executive MBA, and we're really pleased to have him. You guys are in for a treat because he's currently sitting in classes and you'll be applying, if you've not already applied to the program. He's going to be doing hopefully what many of you will be doing in the future to come. Steve, what are some of the things you considered when choosing to start your education at Pepperdine?
Well, a few of the things I said before, but I guess it was going to the mini MBA course, and I got a chance to meet the professors that are on the program. And it was there that the first module we were going to was supposed to be organizational behavior, but I guess they changed the curriculum at the last second. And the first module I went to was going to be accounting and finance. And it was the first 4, and I said, oh my God, how am I going to sit through 4 hours of accounting and finance on a Saturday, no less, at 8 o'clock in the morning. But I went anyway. And then when I got there, I was amazed of how this particular teacher or professor made accounting and finance sound interesting. And actually, you enjoyed the class, and the back and forth that went on between the class, the students, and the teacher really resonated with me. I've never, I mean, I went to college. I never really had that one-on-one kind of experience with a professor before. There was only, I think, 12 or 13 of us in the whole class, so it was a nice class size. And to be able to have that kind of dialogue with the teacher on that small of a class, and they made it interesting. What I found is, as I went through the rest of the mini MBA and even to the classes I take now, is that the faculty really makes the difference. They're all just not straight academia, you say. They haven't been teaching their whole lives. The ones I've encountered have been in the field, working in their respective fields for most of their lives, and then they've either left and gone to teaching, or they're still teaching and they're still doing their businesses on the side. And so it's that real life experience that they bring to the classroom, not just a textbook thing. So it was really it was that. I mean, and then I'd say the final clincher was when I saw my daughter graduate out of Pepperdine in December of 2018, being in the Malibu campus, which, you know, is probably, I would say, the most beautiful campus in the college in the country, but I think it's number 2 or something like that. But that really solidified for me is either the faculty, seeing what kind of classes they had, seeing the graduation, and wanting to be that, you know, in 2020. So that was really what got me to Pepperdine. I mean, other schools around here just didn't seem like they had the same kind of programs that Pepperdine does.
Well, one of the things you spoke to, Steve, was the intimate size of our classes, and many of those that are on the webinar today that I've spoken with, and those of you not, definitely want to point this out to you, that we have small class sizes. So you'll be in class from anywhere from 13 to 20 individuals, and you're with the same cohort the entire time, the entire 19 months of this program. We have amazing programs at this school that are building best for the world leaders with strong ethics. One hallmark we have, though, in our Executive MBA program, among many, is that we do have a cohort-based program. So you will be in the same classes with the same individuals for 19 months. And Steve, I'm sure seeing your daughter walk across that stage was amazing, and, you know, gave you kind of a feel for, you know, what will be yours, you know, soon in the future too, in 2020, December, right?
Yeah, and I use that picture, that image, to actually motivate people in my class now, because I showed them what it looks like. Because when you have an image of what the end game looks like, then it tends to make you want to strive for more. So whenever someone feels like they're being overwhelmed, or there's too much work, or they don't know if it's so long, I just whip out the picture of the graduation and show them my daughter holding her degree and smiling and saying, that's your goal. And it kind of makes everything, puts it in perspective. So
amazing. Thanks, Steve, for that. You know, and that we want to also, with each of you today on this webinar, we're going to be very transparent, because we also know that there's considerations that each of you have when putting forth time and effort and financial respects towards attaining your education. So Steve, list anything that really was top of mind for you regarding concerns you had. Were there any concerns you had before starting your MBA program? And if any, help us understand what some of those concerns were and how you worked through that.
You know, once I was really looking into it and kind of decided that I really wanted to attend Pepperdine, then the discussion became about basically down to 2 things: time and money. And so the money was an issue because, and I hope I'm not scaring anybody here, but it's like almost any MBA program, you have to pay for it. And my company was not going to be paying for any of it. But I looked at it in various different ways, and I actually I work with an executive coach and talked about it ad nauseum with him as well. But the way it worked out is, like, I look at this as an investment into my future, and I see it helping me be very successful over the next whatever time I have left before I want to retire, maybe 10 or 15 years. And so when I looked at it that way, and I looked at the money I'd be spending now, and I just took it as, I'm not going to not do this because my company's not going to pay for it. So I made the decision, after talking with my wife for a long time about it, that we would self-fund this and I would just pay for it myself. And so there were certain things that happened too at that point, when my daughter told me about there was a nice scholarship because they were celebrating the 50th year, so they're giving that away. When I took the mini MBA program, the cost of that went to this tuition as well, so that was another discount. I got a referral from alum scholarship, so it came down, not not a lot, but a little, just enough to make it more enticing to do that. So, and the fact that on a personal side, being a partner in the firm I was in and being bought out, money became, there was some money there because I got bought out as a partner. So if you've been a partner in a firm and they buy you out, they give you the cash for the shares that you had. So the money wasn't as big as an issue after that, but the next concern was time, and that was probably bigger than the money because I'm as Mike said, we're all very busy. I average about 50 hours a week just in the office, and I do a lot of traveling too. So there's days that I'm away from home. Sometimes I leave on Sunday and I don't come back until Friday, or Tuesday through Thursdays, or even just day trips where I'm leaving the house at 6 and coming back at 8 or 10 at night, and then that puts a strain on your relationship with your spouse and your kids too. My kids are I have 5, but I have 3 of them are triplets and 1 is younger, so I have triplets that are going to be 19 next month, and then I have a 17-year-old right after them, and my oldest is 27. But they make life busy as well. So my wife's question was, how much more am I not going to see you if you decide to take this class? And so I was talking to Mike, and Mike was great during this whole process, giving me a lot of information. And then I said, well, I think the best thing for me would be to talk to someone that's already in the program, sort of like what you guys get a chance to do now. And so Mike connected me with the class that was graduating in December. This is, I think, November, right? Or October? I'm not sure, Mike.
It was.
But, and he said, go sit down in the class. He arranged it with the professor and the student advisor that sits in on the class. So I went up to West LA and had a chance to sit in the strategy class. That's the last module. And I think these guys were graduating in like 2 months. And so I sat for about an hour and a half in the class, listened to what people were talking about, and then had a chance to have dinner with everybody because Pepperdine provides meals during the program. So you get a very nice catered dinner, and it's actually one of the highlights of the trip. The classes, everyone talks about the dinners and the lunches. And I had a chance to sit down with certain people and ask them questions. And when I asked, there was a gentleman there who was probably close to my age, and I said, well, how much time? What's the time investment? That's what I'm really concerned about. And he said it, for him, it's different for everybody, and you get out of it what you put into it. So for him, he said he averages about 6 to 8 hours a week. Some people said more, like 13, 14. One woman said like 20, but everyone thought that was a little too much. But she had a lot of time that she can devote to it. But most people working full time, squeaking out 6 to 8 hours a week is difficult. But if you look at it, it's only an hour a day more. And so where would you find that day, that hour? And if you plan it out and you schedule yourself right, you can actually swing it. So I figured it would take about 10 hours a week of more of my time. And then it became a decision. Well, there's something I'd have to give up because I'm already, the schedule is packed. And so you make a sacrifice a little bit to say, I don't want to give up time with my wife or my kids or work. So it's more of my personal time. So any hobbies that I had as far as reading, and I love to hike in the hills and stuff around my house. So I cut that down a little bit, and just doing extracurricular stuff. I just took that time and turned it into school time. So once the money became, just not a minor issue, but a smaller issue, and the time was there, and then I got the commitment from my wife that, she would be behind me 100%, and that's very important because it's a lot of work. It's difficult, and it can stress you out. And if you have someone in your family that's not behind you 100%, it can definitely hurt. But so once that happened, those two concerns kind of went away, and then now it's just a matter of managing yourself against time. So and that's one thing that they definitely teach you how to do, especially the first module. So, but
that's
those
great.
are really the only two concerns. I mean, like I said, I didn't want to do anything online. I like the fact that we go to 3 different campuses. You have the one here in Irvine, which I can see from my office, and I only live 20 minutes away from it. The one in West LA is good. It's only about an hour ride for me. And the one in Malibu, once you get there, it's worth it. So it's not like that's long of a ride. So yeah, and that was basically it. So once those commitments or those concerns were taken care of, I was fully on board.
Steve, thanks. And you point out a couple of very important things. The financial piece, of course, is something we all have to consider when we're looking at education and graduate education. And for those of you listening in today, we of course have an amazing financial aid department that works with individuals in terms of loans and walks you through that process. Of course, we have the Alumni Referral Scholarship, which is a $2,500 scholarship. So if someone you know is a graduate of the university, is currently in school, they can refer you to the program, and you receive automatically a $2,500 referral scholarship as well. And of course, there's companies that do percent matching that they allow to contribute in, so that's an option as well. The other thing you spoke to is about time management, and it's interesting. I was thinking about this when we were talking about just being able to balance everything. For me, I always am so much more diligent and get so many more things done when I actually have more things on my plate. It seems when I don't have, a lot of things, the time kind of gets away, but it forces me when I have a lot of things to get out there and really get after it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Steve also brought up an important point about our class visits. If any of you listening also would wish to attend a class visit with one of our Executive MBA classes, Rachel and I can both set those up for you. So just let us know. We'd be glad to help you in that area. Steve, just in terms of your first term, we know you just finished organizational behavior. And by the way, for just the folks listening in, org behavior is something that we're known for at Pepperdine University. We are known for developing and helping individuals move to greater levels of learning and understanding about themselves, which then transpire and translate over to greater potential in management and leadership roles. So Steve, you just finished this course in org behavior. Give us some examples of how the classroom experience has impacted you outside of the classroom, maybe personally and or professionally.
It's amazing how much it's affected me both in professional and personal life. And I'll go back to to me it was funny, but I had no idea that it was a cohort program. And when I was meeting with the class and they kept talking about a cohort, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? What's a cohort? And when they told me that you with the same people all the time, I was like, oh, that seems okay. But after taking the first module of org behavior, actually after the first weekend, I realized the importance of the cohort program and being with the same people, because the weekend that you're there is more like a leadership workshop, and they say it's better leaders for the world. I forget the actual thing, but it's a leadership transformation program. And when I sat in on that class and I was talking to that one gentleman about the time commitment, he said something that resonated with me, and I still think about it today. And now I see totally what he was talking about, where he said, this isn't just an MBA class. He goes, this program fundamentally changed my life. He says it's changed his relationship with his wife, his kids, his friends, his coworkers, his superiors, and people that work for him. It was amazing, he said, the transformation he's gone through in the 19 months. And I was like, come on, really? I mean, what can an MBA do? How can it do that? But as Mike said, the organizational behavior part is a lot about becoming a leader and being the leader that you want to be and that you can be. And so you learn that by becoming vulnerable. And that class, the first weekend, they break you down into being vulnerable, where you started talking about your personal life and things that have happened and events in your life with what at the time were complete strangers. But it's kind of a safe zone, because no one works with you. No one knows you really. So they can't, if you think about it, if you're at work and you start talking about your fears or your capabilities, people are going to try to use that against you maybe. But in here, everyone was kind of very supportive. And so I'm very thankful that it's a cohort program. I couldn't imagine not being in a cohort program and going to this next module, which is quantitative analysis, and not seeing the same people, because we've created such a bond since January that these are people I talk to now every week. And then in the course of the org behavior part, they separate you into smaller groups in what they call a leadership development group, where you get on the phone every week for like a meeting, a conference call, where you discuss the books that you're reading and the assignments, and it keeps everybody on track. And then you open up about what's going on in your life, and you admit things that you probably don't even admit to either your spouse or your closest friends. And these people help you through this. And as many times we get on the call and I'll say something that happened at work, or I have an issue, and everyone's there, everyone's very supportive. The whole class is supportive and stuff like that. And but the leadership portion of the org behavior module really surprised me and blew me away. But then learning, and there's a lot of reading to do in the org behavior part. I want to say it was close to 12 books that we had to read over the course of the thing, but all very interesting. And then when you talk about it in class, it really helps you as far as you're dealing with other people, how to have conversations, or crucial conversations, what they call it, to get the insight of how people react when emotional intelligence is involved, and empathy and sympathize, and just how to be aware. And it was things that I've already taken to use in my professional life. One of the books and one of the change management theories they discuss is called appreciative inquiry, where instead of looking at something and seeing problems all over the place, you focus on what's working and good, and then focus more on that, and then the problems seem to go away if you keep focusing on the thing. In other words, it's like what you focus on tends to grow. So if you're focusing on the problems, you tend to find more problems. But if you focus on the good stuff, you tend to find more good stuff that will eventually outweigh the bad stuff. And so I've taken this. I've read the book. I've actually read another book on it and talked to Dr. Magnifico, was our professor, who I think, Mike, you'll have more idea of him, but he's like a world-renowned leader in this field, and just a great professor, and made the class that much better. But I've applied it in work, dealing with staff that works for me. I envision them seeing a more positive future and working towards positive things instead of trying to be negative about stuff. And I see a change in them. I see a change in myself with the way I deal with my home life too, with my wife and kids, and being more, having a higher emotional intelligence about what they're going through and how to talk to them about situations without, at everyone starting to argue, and you can actually bring up criticisms and in a polite and encouraging way that I never learned before. So, I mean, I'm from New York. If you're going to criticize somebody, you just did it. You didn't really care what they were thinking. But I'll give you one classic example. Was my daughter is at school back in New York, in Manhattan College, one of the triplets. And so this is her first year there, and she was having dorm issues with somebody in her dorm, and she couldn't resolve them herself. So I called the resident director of the dorm and was asking him to take care of it. And he was just kind of blowing me off. And as he kept doing that, he kept saying, I'll look into it. I was getting more aggravated, and eventually started yelling at him and screaming on the phone. And my wife was like saying, calm down. I'm like, don't tell me to calm down, that whole thing. And I just lost my cookies on the phone. It was kind of a stressful day. And so I hung up the phone, and I was like, he better do what I want him to do. And I'm going to give him to the end of the day, and I'm going to call him back. And I rate him, or I'm going to call his boss. And then one of the books that we had to read for class was called Crucial Conversations, and How to Have It. And that weekend we were going to be discussing the book. So I started to read it. And then when I finished it just in 2 days, I realized that I did absolutely everything wrong in that conversation that I was supposed to do. And that's why I didn't get anything resolved, is because I didn't follow the path, I guess, they tell you to take when you want to have a crucial conversation. Like if you need to discuss something with your kids or your wife or somebody at work, or that resident director where I blew up. And so I called him back after when I just read the few chapters. I called him back the next day and humbly apologized and said that just wasn't right of me to do that, and blah blah blah. And he accepted it and actually took care of the issue quicker than with me screaming at him. He had it done that day, and he appreciated the fact that and I apologized, and I wrote him an email and copied his boss saying what a good help he was, and so those things like that, little tricks that you learn and learnings that help you in all walks of life. And so you can, when you want to have a conversation with a teenager who's maybe doing bad in school, yelling at them about to get better grades is not going to happen. But if you sit down with them at the right moment when they're ready to talk and you're ready to talk, and it's calm and everyone feels good, and you get much more out of them than you would if you just started, as soon as they walk in the door. You don't know what their day was like. You don't know if they're upset about the grades or not, or you don't know if their girlfriend broke up with them or not, or they had a fight. And so learning to see that and realize the moods that other people are in, knowing when, and then that helps you know when to talk to them. So it's a lot of psychology and stuff, but it definitely helps you later, in all walks of life. So.
Steve, thanks for sharing that, and also modeling. I mean, you literally, in this conversation just now, modeled what you've been learning in org behavior yourself, and being transparent with us and your experiences. So thank you so much for that. As you said, I mean, it seems like from what I'm hearing, you were able to apply these things immediately to your personal and professional life, which is absolutely truly amazing. And you spoke a little bit about the faculty. We have some of the most renowned faculty in the fields of organizational behavior, finance, marketing strategy, as well as econ. These folks are all at levels of work in terms of having their PhDs and their doctorates, but they've also been practitioners. They've been executives in companies. One of the hallmarks, again, that you will see in our Executive MBA program is individuals that are teaching you. They are individuals that have been practicing. You will not have someone coming straight out of their PhD and teaching at this university in the Executive MBA program. These individuals have been doing research. They've also been practicing, either consultants or executives, and have their doctorates. So thanks for bringing that important piece up as well, Steve. I know we just have about 5 minutes left. Please begin typing in your questions that you have for Steve. We want to make sure we get to those. I'm so glad each of you have joined us this evening. So make sure you start typing those into the chat box. We'll break over to those with Steve here in just a few minutes. We have 5 left. Steve, quickly, I want you just to touch on this point. Advice. What advice would you give to someone? We've got individuals joining us this evening that are considering either applying, they have applied, or they're going to be applying. What's some advice you'd give to someone considering the Pepperdine MBA experience?
Well, I think the first thing would be to do a lot of research on the programs that you want, and don't be afraid to ask questions and compare, and maybe, I mean, like we talked about sitting in on the class, but do that in other programs as well, and you'll get a good feel for how the thing is, how the program will be, and talk to the people who are either graduating or just about to graduate, as far as what they're experiencing and stuff. It's like we talked about with the fees, this is a huge investment. So take the time to make sure you're making the right decision. So that's definitely one piece of advice that, not that I wish I've done more, but I was kind of always looking at Pepperdine, but I forced myself to go look at other programs as well, and always came back towards Pepperdine, but it just seemed to work out best for me. And also talk about it with your family. I don't know, if everybody's married or boyfriend, girlfriend, spouses, kids, or whatever. Make sure they're on board with it, because like I said, you need a lot of support to do this. And especially when you need to have the time, you need some quiet time to do homework or read a book. But having the support of my family has been hugely instrumental in this, and in the wake of everything that we have to do. So, and then know your own limits as well. I mean, if you don't think you can do the time commitment, then don't go into this thinking it's not going to be that easy. I think after the first weekend, when we had our first class together, and then we went back 3 weeks later, and we all sit around in a circle, and the teacher goes, how's everybody doing? And every single person said they were overwhelmed and didn't get all the work done that they were supposed to. And one woman said it was like bringing home her first baby. She was so overwhelmed with stuff. But when you hear, if you're by yourself and you feel overwhelmed, then you think it's just you. But when you hear everybody in the group had the same feeling, and then they break you down and say, how can we work on that? But when you see everybody doing it, everybody kind of supports each other. And then by the next class, everybody was like, I know what I have to do now. I'm into this, and we were helping each other and stuff. So, but if you don't think you can have that kind of sharing or that know your limits and stuff, then you might want to, not think about it. But I encourage you to, because like I said, much like that guy said, it's a life-changing thing. So.
Great,
but definitely
Steve.
sit in on the class if you can. That's the best advice, and talk to people. So
that's great. No, and thanks for sharing those considerations that you had. We have a question that came in. Jamie asked the question: do we have to physically attend all 4 campuses, including Irvine? So let me. I'll get to that really quickly. I'll answer that one. We rotate. So, for example, in org behavior, you'll start off normally in Malibu, and then you'll rotate. Usually the first class in Malibu, then you'll go maybe say 3 times to West LA, and then maybe the last class will be in Irvine. Most of the classes are going to be in West LA. Each term you may have 1 class in Malibu and 1 in Irvine. Also, there was a question here from Jamie about company reimbursement. Working for a company and they were reimbursed 100%, what type of arrangement does Pepperdine make financially when a person gets full reimbursement? It's a great question. It's one that I can answer part of that. And the other part I would probably set you up with our Director of Financial Services, so he can explain that to you in greater detail. But basically, depending on how they reimburse you, of course, we do accept reimbursement. Many times you have to provide your grades for that reimbursement, and we're able then to help you on our side, setting you up with the correct financial aid, and then you would just then pay that financial aid off with the reimbursement. And Jamie, I can help you with some of those more detailed questions later after we finish the webinar. Let's see. Any other questions that are coming up in the chat box? Please be sure to mention and bring up some of the things you're wanting to ask Steve. We've got him here with us this evening, so this is your time to ask some crucial conversation questions and bring them into the conversation with Steve and I this evening. Steve, let me ask you, what was something that surprised you? What was something that was the most surprising thing you learned or encountered while attending the first trimester of your program?
You know, I think the most surprising thing for me was the friendships I've made so far, and in a short amount of time. So when you first walk into the class on, I think it's a Wednesday they start, and everyone's just kind of milling around. You don't know a soul, right? You don't know where anybody's from or what they do, and you just strike up conversations with them. But the way they organize the class, and within a couple of days, you've sat down and met with everybody in the class and talked to them about stuff, and they put you on teams and things like that. And then with our leadership development group, there was 3 groups of 4, 4, and 5, because we only had 13 people. And the friendships I've created with my LDG group, they call it, I imagine they'll last for the rest of my life. These people know most things about me, most of the struggles I've had my whole life. We've told them about the ups and downs, and they're there for me when I help. And like, if all I have to do is text or call them, and people are willing to do anything to help out. So when I first started the class, actually everyone's got a plan, and then I came down with pneumonia, and I knew these people for a weekend, and they were like, "What can we do? Do you want me to bring you something? Can I do anything for you?" And it was like amazing the level of commitment they had to each other. So yeah, the most surprising thing was the great friends I've made so far, and I cherish those friendships for somebody that I only know for 3 or 4 months. So.
Steve, thanks for that. We have a question coming from Danielle. Steve, is there anything you wish you knew or were prepared for before classes started? I didn't. I mean, I knew it would be a lot of work, but the first organizational behavior class, it really hits you between the eyes as far as the amount of work. And they say that this class this module is one of the toughest ones, because there's a ton of reading. There's a lot of writing papers you have to do, and then there's presentations you do on the spot in the class. But I would say I got the reading list before the class started, and my goal was to read all the books before the class started, but I just didn't get there. And because it just takes too much time, and we realized you have to read the books sometimes twice to really get the gist of them and have a good conversation about them. So the amount of time when you start the class, they don't ease you into it. It's just you dive right in and not even looking to see if there's water in the pool. So I wish I would have prepared more then for that class. When we finally came up for air, I did read a lot more than, and tried to get all the books done. And now that we move to the next module, there's not a lot of reading. There's more of, classroom lecture and discussion about statistics. But again, the teacher makes it exciting, believe it or not. And I did all the pre-work beforehand, so I just wanted to be prepared. So, but that first few classes was an eye-opener, not being in class, not being in a school situation for close to 30 years. So the amount of work that we had to do to get it done was be prepared for it. So. That's great. No, it's a great point you bring out. I know we're just a little bit over our time this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to just pop up really quickly a slide. I mentioned in the beginning that I was going to provide you the application fee waiver code. This is the code that's showing up on your screen right now, and you can plug this in on the application online, and it will waive your fee for your application. So make sure you write this down. It's GBSWVREMBAS, and that's the application fee waiver code. Rachel and I will also email this code to you as well, so you have it. But that is the application fee waiver code. Again, just remember we have our deadline coming up of June 17th for our second round. Please make sure that you get your applications in on or before that time, I would definitely consider if each of you, just to make sure you try to push before getting that in. Round 3 is going to be in later part of July, August 1st. And again, we have so many people that typically apply for fall. That's why we're asking individuals to make sure they apply quickly in terms of round 2. Steve, we just have a few more questions and then we will wrap up this evening because I don't want to keep people beyond their time. Steve, would you encourage someone with over 30 years work experience who has only reached a supervisory level and not yet a key manager position to still take the Executive MBA?
You know, I guess it's what you want to get out of it, but I would imagine if you're, if you've been in work for 30 years and you're a supervisor, maybe the EMBA thing is what you need to make that next step. So if you want to move up the ladder or even more to become more of a supervisor or a line manager or whatever the field may be, this would definitely help you get there. My goal is to definitely do more in my company, and I'm learning so much right now, even though I thought I'm running a successful business unit in my firm, but I really want to take it to the next level where it grows tremendously, and the things I know I'm going to learn here are going to help me do that. And one of the things that I didn't touch on yet, and what I liked about Pepperdine, Mike, was you bring your real life issues to the class. So my group that I run here in my company, like I said, I want to grow it to even bigger than it is now to take it to the next level. And so I'm working on that business plan over the course of the program. And at the end of the program, we'll talk about marketing, and we talk about finance, and we talk about organizational cultures and strategy. It's all based on real life things. It's not textbook stuff. Like compared to when my daughter was taking her MBA, they wrote a business plan for Mattel, but Mattel never told them to do it. They just picked a company that they wanted to work on, and they did all the work for it, and then they offered it to Mattel, and they didn't want it, so they just kind of threw it on a shelf. So this I'm going to use in my life. I'm going to definitely bring this company, whatever I'm going to do with it, I don't know how it's going to look or what I'm going to turn out with it, but if that's what you want to do, if you want to grow wherever you are or become better at this, then this is the place to attend. So I highly encourage it. So we've had people who, like myself, have been in the field for 30 years, and some people, their early 30s who've only been in the field for 10 years, not even, and they don't have a lot of experience, but they know they need something like this to get them to the next level. So yes, I would highly encourage you to do it. So.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. And thanks, Jamie, also in the chat box. Jamie says it was great to hear from Steve. It's encouraging. So thank you for the and positive feedback, Jamie. We appreciate that. And individuals, that have joined us this evening, we appreciate your time and effort that you're spending towards your education and looking into your future and what education can do for your life in terms of your personal and professional life. We at Pepperdine are committed to creating best for the world leaders from a staff perspective and also a faculty perspective. And so Steve is one of those individuals that's joined us on this journey. And Steve, thank you so much for spending time with us, taking time out of your busy schedule with school and family and your work to share back and give back into this community already as even still a current student. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're very
Individuals
welcome.
that have joined us this evening, Rachel and I are pleased to work with each of you. We will be sending you individualized emails after our presentation this evening with information about the program, and you can ask us any questions at that point. Again, we will send you this application fee waiver code. If you didn't write it down, you will get an email from us as well. My name is Mike Weaver. My number is here on the screen, 310-866-6109. You can catch me also at michael.weaver@pepperdine.edu. And we look forward to working with each of you. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us, and God bless.